Corruption matte shade. Whoa. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about the first of 3 Pat McGrath Opulence palettes. We're going to be talking about the Sublime Bronze Temptation eyeshadow palette. It is the one that comes in the red packaging, and these are the 6 shades inside. So I did purchase all 3, but I figured I would do a video for each in case you were only interested in one. That would just sort of make it easier. So I did some swatches. I also did some comparison swatches to the large Mthrshp palette, the green one, the Sublime palette, and also the small one, the Bronze Ambition palette. I thought when I opened this one up that it looked the most similar to those two. So I thought I would kind of compare the 3 all together and just sort of see like what shades were similar, and there definitely were some similarities there. So if you're interested in my thoughts on this palette, seeing some swatches, and then watching me do a demo on this eye look right here, then just keep on watching. So Pat McGrath just released 3 new 6-pan eyeshadow palettes for her holiday line. They're all limited edition, and they're being sold on the Pat McGrath site and also Sephora. So if you are a VIB Rouge member, you can get these palettes 20% off right now during the Rouge sale, and the code for that is Rouge Bonus if you order online. If you go in store, they'll just look you up and make sure you're a Rouge member, and then you'll get your discount. So these are the 3 palettes, and today I'm just going to be talking about this one. I figured if you only got one and not all 3, that me talking about all 3 would be kind of boring. So I'm going to be starting with this one, and then I think I'll be moving to this one tomorrow, and then on Monday I'll be talking about the one in the blue, the Dark Star, the blue packaging. So I purchased these off of the Pat McGrath site. I basically got like the bundle kit, and I think that may still be available on her site. So definitely check that out because the pricing is a very good one. So here's a look at the outer packaging here. Really beautiful. If you have any of her previous 6-pan palettes, it's the same idea. It's like cardboard packaging, and it has this button string closure. The string is actually an elastic, so it's like a button elastic closure, and then this is magnetized. So when you flip it open, you get a mirror over here on the large inside cover, and then the 6 pans sit in this kind of plastic framing, but it's all inside this cardboard box. This palette is made in the USA. She seems to have some different factories because 3 of her Mthrshp palettes are made in Italy, but all the rest of her eyeshadow palettes are made in the US. Ones that are made in Italy, I believe, is the Bronze Seduction one, which is the latest of the big eyeshadow pans, the Subversive, and the Sublime palette. So why don't I go ahead and show you some swatches of these 6 colors here. So I'm going to go across the top and then across the bottom from left to right. So the first one is called Celestial, and this is a shimmering satin shade. Next to that we have Burning Desire, which is a really lovely warm toned matte transition shade. And then next to that we have Supernova, which is the green glittery shade. And then next we have Dark Paradise, which is a dark brown matte. Next to that we have Corruption, which is a really fun duochrome like orange red shifting shimmer. And then last but not least we have Provocatrix, which is a really high shine metallic warmish taupe shade. I don't know how else to describe that. So those are the 6 shades in the Bronze Temptation palette, and I decided to pull out my big old Mthrshp Sublime palette and kind of compare the 2. Let me see if I can hold these up without dropping anything. So I found like some comparisons there. Is that better? Maybe some comparisons there. So I decided to compare the 2 dark brown matte shades. So it's the bottom left-hand corner here and like the second shade in on the bottom row in the Sublime palette. And then I decided to compare the 2 taupey shimmer shades. So it's the bottom right-hand corner compared to the 3rd shade on the top row here in the Sublime palette. Those were the only 2 shades that I found to be similar between those 2 palettes, and you'll see that the matte brown in the Sublime palette is a little bit cooler, it's a little bit darker. I also find the quality of the one in the Sublime palette to be more smooth. So the one in the 6-pan palette feels a lot more dry, and I'll get into what I think about all the formulas after I show you these comparison swatches. And then next I decided to compare it to the Bronze Ambition palette, which is the other 6-pan palette I thought there were some similarities in there too. So the matte transition shade in here looked very similar to the matte transition shade in here, which is on the bottom row and the top row here. And then I decided to compare the metallic taupey shade, which in both palettes is on the bottom right-hand corner. You can see in this one that it's a little bit warmer. So here are those swatches. And the mattes, you know, the tones are a little bit off, but on the skin, I don't know if you'd see that much of a difference. And then the metallic shades, they look also a little bit different. The Bronze Ambition one, the older one in the green palette, looks a little bit warmer. It's a little bit more yellow in tone. So when I first got this palette and decided to just dive right in and do some finger swatches, I found that the green shade and then the matte dark brown shade, those felt drier on my fingers. And the last time I had felt kind of like a dryish matte shade from Pat McGrath was in the kind of pinky purple La Vie en Rose 6-pan palette. It was like the dark purple shade, and that shade, while it was fine, I didn't find it to be like Pat McGrath matte, where it was just really creamy and blended out beautifully. So I was a little bit wary about this shade. And then the green shade, it just felt a little bit gritty. The glitters, I felt like I could feel just a little bit too much. But the other four swatched, and when I played around with them a little bit, those blended out like a dream. Really beautifully, really, really pigmented, gorgeous colors. So in my demo, I decided to use the green and the dark brown a lot. And in my demo, you'll also see that I decided to do this whole like science experiment between synthetic haired and natural haired brushes, because I just wanted to kind of see what the difference was. And some people had been asking me about whether or not you could use synthetic hair brushes with Pat McGrath shadows. I think you can. I just have better luck with natural hair brushes, but you'll see in the demo. But you'll also see in the demo that this blended out nicely. It blended out fine with the natural hair brush, but it did not work very well with the synthetic hair brush. Again, it could just be my experience. I'm not a makeup artist. I just like playing around with stuff, and I am much more used to using natural hair brushes. So that could have just been me. And this green shade, I don't know if the light is catching it, but it is definitely very glittery. It's not like the other three shimmer shades in here where it just is like this creamy metallic. This one definitely is a lot piecier than the other three. So that's why I wanted to definitely use those two shades in my demo, just so you guys could see, you know, how they work and how they go on, because I think the other four, I mean, I use this shade as well and I use this also, but these other four shades are definitely much more, to me, like typical Pat McGrath, like just really creamy, blend out beautifully, work wonderfully, you know, the whole thing. So that's sort of my assessment of all of the shades kind of individually. As a palette, I think this is really beautiful. I think the color selection is really great. I just think it's a lot of fun. And I know the first three that she came out with in this size, they were to kind of pair with the original 3 Mthrshp palettes, the larger ones. So I was trying to figure out if this was supposed to be some sort of like companion palette to one of the larger ones. And since this had bronze in the title, it's red packaging, I thought maybe the Bronze Seduction, the latest Mthrshp palette, I thought maybe that palette was supposed to be like the companion to this one. But holding them up side by side, not necessarily. And the 2 brown matte shades in both palettes are close, but they're not as close as they are to the other comparisons that I did. But anyway, I don't know if this was meant to be some sort of companion palette to this one, or what the deal is with this particular palette. So all in all, I really do like this eyeshadow palette. I find that I like the color range in here. I think you can get a complete eye look out of this one palette since you have those 2 matte brown shades. My only minor complaint is that this matte brown shade is a little bit dry, but it works fine. It worked fine on this eye. You'll see in my demo when I use my natural hair brush. So those are my thoughts on this palette. If you'd like to see a demo of this eye look, then just keep on watching. So I'm going to go into Burning Desire, which is this mid-tone brown matte shade. And I'm going to use my powder blue brush from Real Techniques. This is the B04 brush. I have not used this brush yet, but someone actually asked me, I think either on Instagram or on YouTube, they asked me about using synthetic haired brushes with Pat McGrath, and they had heard that only like natural hair brushes work with it. And my response was that I prefer natural haired brushes, but I can't imagine that these wouldn't work like entirely with synthetic haired brushes. So I thought, you know what, let me give it a shot. I have enough to play around with. So I'm going to start with this one. And I've had very good luck with the powder blue line from Real Techniques. So I am anxious to give this a shot. So I'm going to start by just applying this to the outer edge here, my outer corner, and bringing that into my socket area. This is a really, really fluffy blending brush. It's covering a lot of area, more than what I'm used to. Pretty though, it's blending out really nicely. All right, well that's quite pretty, and this brush worked, I think, really, really well. I think it blended out that transition shade really nicely. But let's go in with a smaller blending brush. I'm going to take my Sigma E38 brush. This is another like dome shaped blending brush that I enjoy. So I'm going to go into the darker shade here, which is called Dark Paradise. This is a dark brown matte, and I'm just going to start to deepen up my outer corner and my socket area. I feel like this shade is a little bit patchy, and I want to make sure it's not this brush, that it's the shadow, or vice versa. So I'm actually going to use a natural haired brush, one that I'm like more used to using, and apply it to my other eye. All right, so I'm taking my Tom Ford blending brush and going back into Dark Paradise, and I'm going to apply this to the other side here. All right, I'm gonna hope that you guys can see this, but huge difference actually. The Tom Ford natural hair brush side actually looks really smooth, blended out, applied beautifully. The synthetic hair side is a little patchy, and that's generally why I don't like synthetic hair brushes. I just don't think that it lays down the product quite as evenly. It always ends up looking a little bit skippy on my skin, and that seriously could simply be my very low level of skill. Like, I'm not a makeup artist. I just like to play around with shadows, and it could just be that natural hair brushes just work better with how I just apply shadow, because I think synthetic hair brushes work perfectly well for a lot of people out there. And I watch other YouTubers using Sigma brushes, other types of brushes, Zoeva brushes, everything, and their looks come out fine. So it could just be me, but I definitely have a much better time with natural hair brushes. But I'm glad we did that little experiment. I'm just going to blend this side out because I'm not happy with it. And I did not mean for this to turn into a brush video, but I did also just want to mention that a lot of people just assume, or they just go for the softest brush. And I don't think that that's always the best tool. I think really, really soft brushes sometimes are very ineffective for what you want to do. So I don't know. I think it's just a matter of just playing around with different brushes and seeing what works for you and what doesn't work for you. I don't think you should automatically assume that one kind of brush is going to work more magically for you than another, or if a brush is more expensive, it's going to be better. I don't think that's always the case. I think it just really depends on the makeup that you use, your style of applying makeup. I mean, all these, there's a gazillion factors. But anyway, I digress. And again, I don't want this to turn into a brush video, but it was just something that someone asked me, so I wanted to address that. So I'm going to continue on with my synthetic hair brushes, though. I have them all laid out here. I'm going to use this Sigma Blending E25 brush, and this is like a flatter shader brush. And I'm going to go into this great green color, which is called Supernova, this color here. And I'm going to put this all over my lid. The other thing I wanted to mention, and this I actually do notice, and I don't know that it's, again, if it's me, if it's the way I do makeup or whatever, but I have a lot more fallout when I use synthetic hair brushes than natural hair brushes. And I think it's because of that grippy action that natural hair bristles have versus synthetics, which are just, they're just very, very smooth in comparison. Like, I have a ton of fallout on the side of my nose here and a little bit on my cheekbone there, and I don't ever really experience like fallout problems unless I'm using like a loose glitter or something. But yeah, whenever I use synthetic brushes, I tend to have that problem more. Okay, I'm gonna go back in with my blending brush. I'm gonna go into that first matte shade, which is Burning Desire, and blend this green out a bit. I wiped away my fallout and it took away some of my makeup, so I'm just gonna run my beauty blender over everything in hopes to kind of blend it all back together. All right, well, now that I mentioned that natural hair brushes don't usually give me as much fallout as synthetic hair brushes, I feel like I need to show you. So I'm gonna go and grab a natural haired flat shader brush and do the same thing with the green shadow on this eye. All right, I've got my Chikuhodo J5523 flat shader brush. This is my favorite flat shader brush of all time. And I'm gonna go back into the Supernova shade, pick up some product and lay that right down on my lid. And already you can see I don't have any fallout. No fallout on my face. And again, I'm gonna blend that out with my Tom Ford brush and the Burning Desire shade. And yep, no fallout on that side. I don't know, my theory is that, like I mentioned, natural hair brushes just have that grip to them that synthetic hair brushes just don't. Anyway, moving on, I'm going to just kind of highlight my inner corner here and maybe my brow bone. I don't know if I want something this shiny, but why not? I'm going to use my Zoeva 223 Petite Eye Blender brush, and I'm going to go into the shade Celestial, which is this one right here. I think what I do want to do though is brighten up my under eye a little bit. I think I'm going to line like the inside of my lower lash line with this same shade and use a different brush. I think that one's too big. I'm going to use this little Chantecaille flat shader. This is synthetic, so I'm going to give this a shot because it's flat and I think I can get onto my lash line pretty easily. I'm actually going to use my Zoeva wing liner brush. This is the 317 brush. I'm going to go back into this dark matte shade called Dark Paradise and line my lower lash line. So that's it for the eyeshadow palette. I'm actually going to apply some Pat McGrath eyeliner in Black Coffee along my waterline and tightline with it, but I'll do that off camera and I'll be right back. So I'm going to see if this Twilo lip gloss will look good all on its own. All right, so there is Twilo lip gloss. My God, Twilo used to be my favorite club back in the day. So there is my finished look. I hope you enjoyed this video. I pretty much gave you all the thoughts that I had on this palette in the intro. So let me know if you have any questions down below in the comment section. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe down below if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video.